The first thing Mara Bennett noticed after waking from surgery was the empty chair beside her bed, because the nurse had told her someone would be waiting there when she opened her eyes. Yet the only person standing nearby was a stranger in blue scrubs adjusting an IV pump, while rain tapped softly against the windows of the private surgical center in Seattle. Her husband, Adrian, had promised to pick her up after the procedure, but when Mara finally checked her phone with trembling fingers, she found a message saying, "Something came up at the office. Take a cab home." And beneath it was a photograph from a restaurant she recognized as being 40 minutes away from his supposedly urgent meeting. The ride home felt strangely unreal as Mara watched wet streets slide past the window, her surgical bag resting against her feet and a folded blanket protecting her abdomen from the seatbelt, while the driver occasionally glanced at her through the mirror as though he wanted to ask whether she was all right, but understood that some questions were better left alone. When she reached the townhouse, she expected Adrian to have left flowers or medicine on the kitchen counter, but instead she found the house silent, his expensive shoes missing from the entryway, and a strange silver key lying beside the mail with a handwritten label that simply read, "Harbor Room." Mara might have ignored it if she had not noticed the same words written on an unfamiliar calendar appointment on Adrian's tablet, and when she opened the calendar, she discovered recurring entries every Thursday evening for nearly 7 months, each one marked with different names, different restaurants, and one mysterious address near the waterfront. She did not confront him that night because something inside her warned that anger would only make him more careful, so she photographed the information, placed the tablet exactly where she found it, and quietly called her older brother Daniel, who had spent years working in corporate investigations and understood better than anyone how dangerous it could be to accuse someone before knowing the entire story. Daniel arrived the following morning with coffee, groceries, and one simple question. "Do you want the truth, or do you want an explanation that lets you sleep tonight?" And Mara answered, "The truth," even though she knew the answer might destroy the life she had spent 8 years building. Together, they began examining the financial records Mara had access to through the family construction company, and what first appeared to be an affair quickly became something much larger when they discovered unexplained payments to a consulting firm, transfers into a private investment account, and a series of property purchases approved through a signature that looked almost exactly like Adrian's but had been created digitally. The deeper Mara looked, the stranger everything became, because the mysterious consulting company was not connected to a mistress at all, but to a former employee named Elise Harper, a woman Adrian had supposedly fired after she accused a senior executive of manipulating company accounts. Daniel discovered that Elise had been receiving payments from several businesses connected to Adrian's partners, and one old court document revealed that she had been fighting a lawsuit involving millions of dollars in missing investment funds. "Your husband may not be cheating on you," Daniel said quietly, "but someone is using him, and he may be helping them without realizing how deep the trap goes." Days later, Mara followed Adrian when he left the office after telling her he had an evening meeting, and instead of going to a restaurant, he drove to an abandoned warehouse near the industrial district, where a black SUV was already waiting. From a safe distance, Mara watched Adrian meet a nervous-looking man carrying a leather case, and when the case opened, she caught sight of documents bearing the logo of her own company. But before she could see more, the man suddenly looked toward the street as though he knew someone was watching, forcing Mara to leave before her presence was discovered. That night, Adrian returned home unusually calm, kissed Mara on the forehead, and asked whether she was feeling better, but she noticed a small cut on his hand and a smear of blue ink on his cuff that matched the ink used on the documents she had photographed earlier. "I need to tell you something," he said, sitting across from her, and for one terrifying second she thought he had discovered everything. But instead he admitted that someone had been blackmailing him for months, and that he had been secretly trying to recover stolen company records before the board discovered the losses. Mara wanted to believe him, but Daniel found one crucial piece of evidence that changed everything. The mysterious harbor room was not a hotel or apartment, but a private conference room inside a law firm, And the person Adrian had been meeting there every Thursday was his estranged father, Victor Bennett, the former chairman of the company who had supposedly been living overseas after being removed from the board. When Mara confronted Adrian, he finally confessed that Victor had been secretly manipulating company ownership through hidden trusts, and Adrian had been cooperating because Victor threatened to expose a devastating secret about Mara's own family, a secret Adrian had kept hidden because he believed protecting her meant carrying the burden alone. The final piece arrived on the morning of the emergency shareholders meeting, when Mara entered the conference room carrying a folder and discovered Victor waiting beside the company attorneys, confident that Adrian would be blamed for every missing dollar and forced out of the business. Instead, Mara placed the original bank records, digital signatures, trust documents, and warehouse photographs on the table, revealing that Victor had orchestrated the financial scheme while Adrian had spent months secretly collecting evidence against him. And when the attorneys compared the records, they discovered that Victor had forged Adrian's authorization on transactions worth nearly $8 million. Months later, Mara left the company and opened a financial investigations firm of her own, refusing to spend another year being the person who quietly cleaned up everyone else's disasters while pretending everything was fine. And although Adrian remained in her life, their relationship changed completely because trust could no longer mean simply believing someone's words. It had to mean being brave enough to ask difficult questions before silence became another form of betrayal. Mara sometimes thought about that rainy morning at the surgical center, the empty chair beside her, and the message that had started everything, and she realized that the hardest part of her journey had not been discovering the truth, but finally understanding that she was strong enough to face it, rebuild her life, and choose what came next for herself. Please subscribe to our channel and share this video with your friends and family. We create entertaining and inspiring stories for our viewers, and your support helps us continue making great content for you.